Welcome back, everybody. In this video, our focus is going to be lesson number 61. And in lesson number 61, we have our very first instance of a melody being played in the bass with the thumb. So in this instance, we're going to make sure our thumb is louder than everything else. And it's literally just a melody in the bass and some accompaniment. So if you went through lesson 60, I did mention to not play the accompaniment so loud so that it doesn't drown out the melody that's being played on top. So same thing, but only it's still going to back off. You're still going to back off with the accompaniment with the same two fingers that you used in lesson 60, I and M. Only in this instance, your thumb is going to be the loud note. The melody is in the bass. There is no top voice, just bottom. Well, I guess the accompaniment could be seen as the top voice, but it's just two voices. So the first thing you want to make sure you do is check to make sure that anytime you come across an open string, you are muting it with your thumb so that the bass notes are not overlapping each other. There's a big one that we tend to miss out on. Well, we do see it in measure 1, 2. From measure 3 to 4, we have an A in the bass to a G. See, we don't want to hear that, right? So we can avoid that by simply playing the G with the rest stroke. And that'll stop the A, okay? It happens again, somewhere again in that staff line, measure 3, 4, and then I think 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 7 and 8. And just look for them. Anytime you have an open bass string, make sure that it is muted in the following measure after you play that thumb with either a rest stroke or by returning to that string after you play that next note. So watch for that. I do want to talk to you about something new. Now, we did talk about musical phrases, so let's first identify the phrases. Our first phrase is the first 4 bars. The second phrase is the next 4 bars. Here it is. 2 phrases. So you may have noticed that at the end of that first phrase, I pulled back a little bit, not in volume, but I changed my tempo. I pulled back on the tempo, and then as I began the next phrase, I stepped up the tempo to catch up to the tempo that I was at. This is something called rubato, R-U-B-A-T-O. And rubato is simply what we do to play with the tempo, the push and the pull of the tempo, to give the music a more organic feeling. Again, making sure that we are avoiding sounding like a computer. So listen again, and listen how I slow down, but then I speed up, because when I slow down, I gotta catch up to that tempo. So I catch up because I did not mention rubato comes from I think it's Italian. But I do know for a fact that it literally comes from the word to rob. That's the origin of the root word. So you're robbing time from one measure, and then you're putting it somewhere else. So that's why if we slow down, we got to speed up somewhere else, so that we are always more or less in time. But it's just getting there is going to be like this sort of, the best way to explain it, again, is just that sort of push and pull with the tempo. So listen again to the first 8 bars and see if you can hear how at the end of that first phrase, which is at the end of measure 4, and then the beginning of the next phrase, which is measure 5, I both slow down and then speed up to catch myself, basically. So here it is again. We'll keep going. so on and so forth. That's a big one. That bass note, you might not catch that one. That is measure 17, 18, 19, 20, measure 21. In measure 21, you have an A followed by an E. When you play that E, your thumb has to return to that A to stop it for me. And then again here, when you play that F, you have to stop the A because you just played a fifth string open right before that, a count before that. So listen to that rubato again. As I'm playing, hopefully you heard how I was pulling back. I wasn't just immediately changing tempos. It wasn't like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I didn't change tempos. I just gradually started to slow the tempo down and then gradually started to bring it back up to tempo. And that's a big difference. A lot of times students will just slow down. They won't slow down. They'll change tempos. They'll just totally just change tempos. Just black and white. And it's not like that. It has to be gradual. It has to be gradual. So here it is again. I'll play the first couple parts of it. So I played the whole thing. I just kind of got into it. I was exaggerating just a little bit so you can hear it. So it's easier to hear. So in practice, I would make it a bit more subtle because it's the subtle things that are going to make the biggest difference. Because that sounded it was kind of oozing a little bit, like too much. Like, okay, it was too much. But again, I just wanted you to be able to hear that. Ideally, in an ideal situation, it's, again, a bit more subtle. Make sure you bring out the bass. Hopefully you were able to hear how the bass was very clear and the accompaniment was always in the background. I also did add staccato on the second count. And I did that by preparing the I&M immediately after I played that second count, getting ready for the third count. In other words, 1, 2, and then 3. This was not so bad if you want it. Once you kind of get the hang of it, if you want to add some ponticello somewhere, a really important measure, 17, 18, 19, 20, measure 21, we have an accidental. So that's all going to be big because the harmonies are changing. I've mentioned this many times. There is a change in the harmonics, not the harmonics, just in the harmonies. We have a C sharp. That C sharp doesn't belong in the key of C. In the key of C, the notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, B. There's no C sharp. So that C sharp is a big deal. That's your resolution. That D minor, that's a D minor button. So you can add a crescendo there. At this point, it should be automatic. You see an accidental, okay, that is an important part of this lesson, of the harmonic change. So let's bring it out. Let's bring it out so that we are taking the listener on a journey. And if you can make that more effective to the listener will enjoy the music that much more. They'll be like, oh man, that sounded so cool. And then there was that cool part where you got kind of loud. I like that. Stuff like that, okay? So that concludes lesson 61. There is a tie. I should mention there is a tie. The second to last measure, you have a C. You you're not going to play that C on the last measure. The notes are going to be C in the bass, followed by E in the bass, and then a C in the middle voice, I should say, and then a C in the top voice. You are not going to play that bottom C because that is a tie, and we learned about ties in one of the previous lessons. So technically, when you play that C, that dotted half note, 1, 2, 3, it's going to ring for one more quarter note. We're adding one more quarter note of value to that dotted quarter note. So 1, 2, 3, and then all we're going to play is the C on top and the E in the middle voice. And then you have your rest, and you're done. All right? Okay, great. I will see all of you in lesson 62.